The first snow of December fell over Ashburn, Vermont, soft and heavy, blanketing the ancient courthouse in white. Inside, the grand hall buzzed with voices, judges, clerks, nobles, and witnesses all speaking at once, their words bouncing off marble columns and wooden benches polished by generations of power. No one noticed the girl sitting silently near the back. Evelyn Hart, 17, small for her age, her gray wool dress plain and unadorned. Her dark hair was braided neatly, her pale hands folded in her lap. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She never did. For years they called her the Silent Daughter. The cursed child of Judge Matthew Hart, brilliant, ruthless, and utterly ashamed of the daughter who had never uttered a single word since birth. Today, her father stood at the front of the court, his voice commanding. "The matter is closed," he said. "The prisoner will hang at dawn." There was a murmur in the crowd. The man in chains, broad-shouldered, his hair dark and wild, lifted his head slowly. His eyes, when they met Evelyn's across the hall, were gold. Not brown, not hazel, gold, glowing faintly even under the dim winter light. He didn't look afraid, he looked aware. The clerk slammed his gavel. Silence in the court. Evelyn's heart pounded. She didn't know why, but she couldn't look away from the prisoner. Even from across the room, she felt him, something magnetic and alive, like a sound she could feel in her bones but not hear. Her father continued. "You've been accused of the murders at Hollow Ridge. You stand charged with slaughtering livestock, men, women, and children. You claim the full moon drives you, that you are no longer human." The man smiled faintly. "I claim nothing," he said, his voice low, rough, carrying through the hall. "But the moon doesn't ask permission." A shiver ran through the room. Her father's jaw tightened. "You mock this court." The man tilted his head, his eyes flicking briefly, deliberately toward Evelyn. "No, I pity it." The judge's gavel struck again. "Enough." The prisoner, the beast, said nothing more. The trial ended. The guards dragged him away, but Evelyn couldn't move. The echo of his voice lingered, deep and warm, vibrating somewhere inside her chest. For the first time in her life, she wanted to speak. The words pressed at the back of her throat like a secret trying to escape. When the hall emptied, she stood. The air was cold, still scented faintly of iron and smoke. Through the frosted window, she saw them lead him down the courtyard steps toward the holding cells beneath the courthouse. He didn't look back. Not until she thought his name, though she didn't even know it. Then he stopped, he lifted his head. Slowly, he turned toward the window, toward her. Their eyes met again through the snow, and somehow he heard her. The world tilted. Evelyn stumbled back, her hand clutching the windowsill. The sound that filled her head was not her own voice, but his, whispering her name as though he had known it all his life. "Evelyn!" She froze. Her heart stuttered. Her breath came shallow down in the courtyard. He smiled. Just slightly. Enough to make her feel as though the entire room had filled with heat. Then the guards shoved him forward, and he disappeared into the darkness below the courthouse. That night, the storm rolled in over Ashburn. The town slept under a veil of white. Inside the Hart Manor, the lights burned late, her father reading law briefs in his study, the servants whispering about the beast in the cell beneath the court. Evelyn sat in her room, the window cracked open, the cold air biting her skin. She couldn't sleep. Not after hearing her name whispered in her head by a man she'd never met. At midnight, she wrapped herself in her shawl and slipped out. Courthouse was only a few blocks away, looming over the square like a frozen monument. The streets were empty, the lamps flickering in the snow. She moved quickly, her boots crunching softly, her breath visible in the dark. The door to the lower hall wasn't locked. Her father had the only key to the cells, but Evelyn knew every passage, every hidden stair. She'd spent her childhood exploring the courthouse like a haunted house, following echoes no one else heard. The stone corridors beneath smelled of damp and rust. Torches burned low, casting shadows that seemed to move. At the end of the hall, behind a row of iron bars, he was waiting. The prisoner sat on the floor, his wrists chained, his head bowed, his dark hair fell into his eyes. But when he looked up, it was like the world stopped breathing. Those eyes. That gold. She took a hesitant step forward. "You came," he said softly, his voice echoing against the stone. Evelyn froze. She couldn't speak. She never could. He tilted his head. "You don't have to say it. I can hear you." Her pulse spiked. She thought, without meaning to, asterisk, how? Asterisk, he smiled, slow and knowing. Because you called me. Evelyn shook her head, stepping back. No, he murmured. Not with your mouth, with your blood. He rose to his feet. Even chained, he was tall, powerful. More shadow than man. You're not like them, are you, little one? You can feel it too. The silence between heartbeats. The way the moon hums when it's full. Her lips parted. Tears burned her eyes. No one had ever seen her before. He stepped closer to the bars. The air thickened, charged, as if lightning hummed in the space between them. What are you? She whispered inside her head. He smiled faintly. They call me Lucian. His voice brushed against her skin like warmth. Alpha of the Silver Burn Pack. And you? His golden gaze softened. You're mine. Evelyn trembled. No, she thought weakly. That can't be. Lucian's expression darkened, not with anger, but recognition. You don't know what you are, do you? She shook her head. He took a long breath, his chains rattling softly. Your silence isn't a curse, Evelyn Hart. It's power. A voice the world doesn't deserve to hear. The torchlight flickered. Shadows danced across his face. You were born of moonblood, he said. The last of the line that once spoke to us in the old tongue, the language that commands the wild. Evelyn's vision blurred. Moonblood. She thought faintly. Yes, his voice softened to a whisper. That's why you could hear me. Why I could hear you. A sound echoed through the hall. The clang of boots on stone. Guards. Lucian's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to her. They'll kill me at dawn. Evelyn's heart lurched. Unless, he said, his voice dropping lower, you speak. She shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. She couldn't. Lucian stepped forward, pressing his hands against the bars. Not to them, he said. To me, just once. Say my name and I'll be free. The torches flickered wildly, as if the air itself had caught fire. She felt her throat ache, a sound clawing its way upward, trapped beneath years of silence. Her lips parted, trembling, desperate. Evelyn, he whispered again, his voice like the pull of the tide. The footsteps were closer now. She closed her eyes, tears burning her skin. And for the first time in 17 years, she spoke. Her voice was soft, raw, strange, but powerful enough to make the stone tremble. Lucian. The chains shattered. The torches blew out, and in the darkness his golden eyes burned brighter than the moon. The storm had swallowed Ashburn by dawn. The town's cobblestone streets were drowned in snow and silence. But under the courthouse, in the darkness that once held chains and blood, the cell was empty. Lucian was gone, and Evelyn Hart had vanished with him. When she woke, her world smelled like pine, smoke, and iron. She was lying on a bed of fur inside a wooden cabin, her body wrapped in warmth so unfamiliar it almost frightened her. For the first time in her life, there were no echoes of gavel strikes or whispers of pity, only the steady rhythm of wind against the window panes. Then came the voice. You're awake. Evelyn turned sharply. He stood by the fire, his broad back turned toward her, the flames painting gold into his dark hair. He was bare from the waist up, a bandage wrapped around his ribs. Scars crossed his shoulders like a map of old battles. Lucian. The name felt dangerous even in her thoughts. How? She hesitated. Her voice was a whisper, raw, trembling as if her throat still remembered the years of silence. Lucian turned, his golden eyes catching the firelight. You spoke, he said softly. You broke the seal. Evelyn struggled to sit up. Her head spun. What happened? You freed me, he said simply. Your voice called the old words, the moon's true name. No bars forged by men can hold one who's been chosen by it. She blinked, confused. I didn't say anything but your name. Lucian smiled faintly. To you, maybe, but to the moon? You sang its oldest song. He came closer, moving with a quiet grace that felt unnatural, or more than natural. You should rest. The townsfolk will wake soon, and your father will notice you're gone. Evelyn flinched at the mention of him. He'll think you took me. Lucian's smile vanished. He'll be right. He crouched near her, his gaze searching her face. Do you remember anything from last night, before we left? Evelyn shook her head slowly. Only your eyes. The chains. The way the air broke. The bond, he murmured. It's begun. Her pulse jumped. The bond? Lucian's gaze softened but didn't waver. When a moonblood speaks the name of an alpha under the full moon, their fates entwine. My strength becomes yours. My senses, my pulse, they echo in you. It's not love, Evelyn. It's older than that. She swallowed hard. So I'm cursed now. No, his voice dropped, a low growl of warmth. You're claimed. The word rippled through her chest like heat. She wanted to look away, but COULDN single quotes T. Lucian rose, pacing slowly toward the window. The court will send hunters. They won't rest until we're both dead. You carry their shame, and I, their fear. Evelyn's hands trembled. You said the moon chose me. Why? He turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Because you're the last of the moon bloodline. Your silence wasn't born of weakness. It was protection. Your voice carries power meant to bind the wild, to calm the alpha's rage. But they tried to smother it. My father, she whispered. Lucian nodded. He knew what you were. He hid you from us. From me? Evelyn's throat tightened. He said I was broken. Broken things don't move the sky, Lucian said quietly. You are the voice that steadies it. The words hit her like sunlight through frost. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the snow fell thick and soundless, the forest wrapped in mist. Evelyn could hear the faint rhythm of Lucian's breathing, slow, deep, steady, and somewhere beneath it, the quiet echo of her own heartbeat syncing with his dot. She stood carefully, her legs trembling. Where are we? North of Ashburn, he said. Beyond the border the court dares not cross. He reached for a heavy wool cloak and draped it around her shoulders. His hands brushed her collarbone, warm, calloused, and she felt the heat rise in her cheeks. I have a pack, he said, pulling away. What's left of it? They'll want to see you. See me? Lucian's jaw tensed. They've been waiting for you, Evelyn. For the one who could unbind what the court cursed us with. The curse that makes you wolves, he finished. Monsters. Murderers in their eyes. But we weren't born beasts. We were made into them. Evelyn frowned. How? He stared into the fire. Centuries ago, the court stole what was sacred, the voice of the moonblood. They silenced her. And in taking her voice, they stole our humanity. Every full moon since we've been trapped between man and beast. Until one of her blood speaks again. The realization hit her like a weight. You think I can undo that? I don't think, Lucian said softly. I know. Evelyn turned toward the window. The storm had eased, the gray dawn pressing faintly through the trees. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of the quiet. The silence no longer felt empty. It thrummed with life. I don't know if I can do what you want, she said finally. Lucian stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. You already did. Her eyes met his. There was something in the way he looked at her. Reverence, longing, and danger all tangled into one. Before either could speak again, a distant howl split the morning air, not the mournful call of wolves, but the sharp metallic sound of horns. Lucian's head snapped toward the window. Hunters. Evelyn's stomach turned cold. My father. Lucian growled softly, his eyes flashing gold. He's brought them to the border. He'll burn the forest if he has to. He grabbed her hand. Come, we need to move. Evelyn froze. Lucian, what if I speak again? Could I? Not yet, he said quickly. Your voice will draw more than fire this time. The old power listens now and it remembers blood. He led her through the back door into the forest, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The cold bit through the air, but his hand around hers was steady and impossibly warm. They ran through the trees, weaving between birches and frozen streams until the sound of horns faded. The forest opened into a clearing, and there, half hidden under frost, stood a circle of standing stones. The sacred ground, Lucian said. Lucian said, breathless. The court burned this place centuries ago, but it still hums with her memory. Evelyn stepped forward, touching one of the stones. It was warm. The same hum she'd felt in her bones since the night of the trial vibrated faintly beneath her skin. "What do you see?" Lucian asked. She closed her eyes. "Light, silver, like the moon is inside the stone." Lucian's voice softened. "Then it's true." She opened her eyes. "What is?" "You're her descendant. The first moonblood in 100 years." Before she could answer, a sharp crack echoed through the forest, the sound of a musket firing. Lucian's body tensed. He shoved her behind one of the stones. "Stay down." Another shot rang out, splintering bark above their heads. Then came the voice she feared most. "Evelyn!" Her father's tone was raw, furious, echoing through the trees. "Step away from that creature." Lucian's jaw tightened. "He found us." Evelyn's pulse thundered. "He'll kill you." Lucian's golden eyes flicked toward her, full of something dark and defiant. "He'll try." He stepped into the open, the snow swirling around him. His shoulders squared as if he faced not a man but a memory he'd waited centuries to destroy. He called. "Still hiding behind laws and iron, did you come to silence another child?" Her father raised his weapon. "You have no right to speak her name." Lucian's voice turned low. "And yet she spoke mine." Her father fired. Evelyn screamed. But before the bullet struck, Lucian moved, faster than sight, his body shifting midair. Bones cracked, skin rippled, and when the shot hit, it struck fur, not flesh. The Alpha stood before her now, massive, silver-black, his golden eyes blazing. The hunter shouted. The forest erupted in chaos. And Evelyn, trembling, pressed her palm to the glowing stone and whispered, though no one had told her to, "Stop." Her voice rolled through the clearing like thunder. The air split open with light. The bullet froze midair. The snow lifted from the ground. The wolves howled in unison from miles away, and for one fleeting moment even her father fell silent. The forest held its breath. The air shimmered with light so pale it seemed carved from the moon itself. Every snowflake hovered midair. Every branch trembled under an invisible weight. Evelyn stood in the center of the clearing, her hand pressed to the glowing stone, her lips parted in shock. She hadn't meant to speak. The word had risen from her throat on its own, instinct, not choice. Yet it had stopped everything. The musket ball hung inches from Lucian's chest, suspended in the frozen air like a tear made of lead. Her father stood motionless among his men, his face locked in horror. The Alpha turned slowly, his fur glinting silver under the light. He looked at Evelyn, not as a beast, not as a savior, but as if he were seeing something divine and dangerous at once. "Evelyn," he said softly, his voice vibrating through both man and wolf. "You spoke again." Her breath came fast. I didn't mean to." He stepped closer, the snow crunching beneath his paws. "You did." And now the forest listens. The wind shifted, carrying whispers, not human, not animal, but something older. The stones hummed, glowing faintly in response to her voice. Beneath her feet, the earth itself pulsed with life. Her father's weapon fell from his hands, clattering onto the frozen ground. "God help us," he whispered. Evelyn turned to him, tears stinging her eyes. "Father, don't you speak to me," he spat, stepping back as if her words could burn. "What have you become?" Lucian's growl rumbled low, protective, warning. "Stay back," Evelyn said quickly, her voice shaking. "Is my father?" Lucian's eyes glowed brighter. "He's the man who tried to silence the moon bloodline. He's the reason your voice was chained." Matthew Hart's eyes narrowed. "You know nothing of chains, monster." "I know enough," Lucian growled. "You buried her voice to protect your name." Evelyn's gaze darted between them. "Protect his name? What do you mean?" Lucian looked at her, the truth heavy in his expression. "Tell her, Matthew." Her father's jaw tightened. Lucian's voice turned quiet, almost sorrowful. "Tell her who her mother was." The color drained from the judge's face. Evelyn's heart twisted. "My mother died giving birth to me." "That's what he told you," Lucian said. But she didn't die in childbirth. She died because she spoke. Her father shouted, "Enough!" But the alpha continued, his voice steady as snow. She was one of us, Evelyn. Half moonblood, half human. The court discovered her power. When she tried to use her voice to stop them from slaughtering my pack, they burned her alive in the courthouse square. Evelyn froze, her breath shattering into silence. No, her father's eyes were wet. I tried to save you, he said hoarsely. You were too small. You'd inherited her mark. I couldn't let them see. So I hid you. I silenced you before they could. Lucien's growl deepened. You cursed your own daughter to protect yourself. She was a child. The man roared. She didn't know what she was. If the court had found out, she would have freed us, Lucien cut in, his golden eyes bright with rage. The same way she's freeing us now. Evelyn stumbled back, tears streaking her cheeks. You both lied to me. My whole life, I thought I was broken. Lucien softened instantly, his body shifting, bones cracking back into human form. He knelt before her, the steam of his breath visible in the cold. You were never broken, he said gently. You were asleep. The world was too loud for what you were born to hear. She shook her head, trembling. I don't want this power. It's not power, he said quietly. It's truth. Her father stepped forward, his boots crunching over the snow. You don't understand what you're dealing with. That creature has poisoned you. Lucien's eyes flashed. She's waking, Matthew. Not poisoned, awakened. Evelyn looked between them, her heart pounding. If my mother was one of you, what does that make me? Lucien's gaze met hers, steady and solemn. It makes you the bridge. The last voice of the moon, the one who can end the curse or remake it. The air shifted again. The stones glowed brighter. The moon broke free of the clouds above. The moon broke above. Spilling silver over the clearing dot, the hunters stirred, shaking off the strange paralysis. One raised his rifle again, shouting, "Shoot him!" The world snapped back into motion. Lucien turned sharply, his hand outstretched. The bullet never left the gun. Instead, it twisted midair and dropped harmlessly into the snow. He looked at her, voice urgent. Evelyn, you have to choose. Choose what? Your voice is bound to mine now. You can use it to free us, end the curse forever, but it will take everything you are. Her father shouted, Don't listen to him. If you do this, you'll die. Lucien's gaze flickered with pain. He is right. If you speak the binding words, the moon blood inside you will burn away, and so will I, the pack will be human again. But we'll both be gone. The snow fell harder, the light growing blindingly bright. Evelyn could feel the energy thrumming beneath her skin. The power of every silenced voice before her begging to be heard. Her father reached for her. Please, Evelyn. Don't leave me. Lucien whispered, If you don't, the curse will live forever. I'll lose myself again. I'll become what they say I am. Her hands trembled. The moonlight pulsed around her, waiting. I can't, she whispered. Lucien stepped closer, his voice breaking. Then the blood will never end. Evelyn met his eyes, those impossible golden eyes. She saw the man who had whispered her name before she'd ever spoken a word. The beast who had killed to survive. The soul who had seen her when no one else dared to look, and she knew. She placed her hand against his chest, feeling his heart beating in perfect rhythm with hers. Then we end it together. Before he could stop her, Evelyn lifted her face to the sky. The moon's light poured down, wrapping her in silver fire. She opened her mouth, and this time she didn't whisper. She sang. The sound was like nothing the world had ever heard, half storm, half prayer. Her voice rose through the trees, across the mountains, into the heavens themselves. The snow lifted, glowing, spinning like dust in the air. Lucien's body arched, his eyes blazing gold, his veins burning with light. Around them, the hunters dropped their weapons. Their eyes wide with awe and terror, her father fell to his knees. The song grew louder, too bright, too beautiful. The stones cracked. The light exploded outward, then silence. When the glow faded, the clearing was empty. The hunters were gone. The stones lay cold and lifeless. Matthew Hart knelt in the snow, clutching the spot where his daughter had stood, but the air was different. The curse was gone. The howls that had haunted Ashburn for centuries were silent. The first human footprints, barefoot. Warm led away from the clearing toward the rising dawn dot and in the distance at the edge of the forest. A lone wolf stood watching. Its eyes were gold. The sun rose pale and cold over Ashburn, streaking the forest with light that looked almost holy. Frost glittered on the trees like scattered glass. The snow, once thick and gray, had begun to melt, revealing patches of dark earth beneath. It had been 3 days since the night the forest sang. 3 days since Evelyn Hart disappeared. The townspeople whispered of miracles and omens. They said the howls had stopped. The hunters who returned to the village remembered only light, too bright to look at, and a sound like thunder, wrapped in music. They didn't speak of Lucian. They didn't speak of the girl. But Matthew Hart could still hear her voice in his dreams. Far from the town, deep within the mountains, Evelyn woke beside a river that glowed faintly under the morning sun. Her body ached. Her throat burned as if she had swallowed fire. She blinked against the light, the memory of her song still echoing in her bones. The world was quiet. No chains. No shouting. No court, only the steady rush of the river, the hum of wind through pines, and the faint scent of smoke nearby. She sat up, her hair falling loose over her shoulders. Her dress was torn, the edges singed. Her bare feet were covered in ash. She looked around dizzy until she saw him. Lucian. He was kneeling a few feet away, bare-chested, his hands buried in the water, washing blood from his skin. The light caught his scars. Old ones. Deep ones. But beneath the pale surface, she could see something shifting. Alive. He looked at her. And for a heartbeat, the forest stilled. Evelyn, he said softly, her name on his tongue, still the same low, rough tone that wrapped around her like warmth. You're alive, she whispered. So are you. He smiled faintly, though his eyes carried something heavier, deeper. I thought the moon took you. Evelyn swallowed, her voice still fragile. It tried. Lucian's gaze fell to the mark on her wrist. The faint silver crescent that once glowed like fire was now no more than a scar, pale, thin, almost gone. You burned it out, he said quietly. I freed it, she corrected. That was the price. Lucian's expression darkened. You could have died. So could you? He turned away, running a hand through his hair. We were supposed to. That's what the song was meant to do, end everything. Evelyn frowned. Then why are we still here? He looked up, the morning light catching in his golden eyes. Because you changed the song. Her heart stumbled. I don't remember. You didn't sing the binding, he said. You sang mercy. The old word. The one even the moon forgot. Evelyn's breath caught. So the curse is gone. He nodded slowly. Yes, the pack is free. They'll wake as men again when the moon rises. Her chest tightened. And you? Lucian hesitated. She saw it then, the way his hand trembled slightly, the way his body swayed under the weight of something invisible. His strength was fading. Lucian. I'm not cursed anymore, he said. But I'm not what I was either. The Alpha's blood doesn't belong to this world without the moon's bond. He met her gaze, his voice low, steady but full of grief. The song gave me back my soul, but it's burning out. She felt it, the faint echo between them, the thread of their bond weakening. It pulsed once, faintly, like the last heartbeat of a dying star. No, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. There has to be a way. Lucian shook his head. You gave me my choice, Evelyn. This is the price. He stood, walking closer until the distance between them vanished. He lifted his hand, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You freed me. You gave my pack back their lives. You gave me back my name. She pressed her hand over his, trembling. I didn't do it to lose you. He smiled, soft, aching. You were never meant to keep me. The forest stirred. The air shimmered faintly, gold bleeding into the morning light. Lucian looked toward the horizon, where the mountains burned with dawn. Do you hear that? Evelyn listened. The faint sound of wolves. Not howling in pain, but in song. Joyful. Alive. They're calling, he said. They re-free now. They remember. She shook her head. Stay, please. His fingers traced the curve of her cheek, his touch feather light. If I stay, I'll fade slower. But I'll still fade. Then fade here, she whispered. With me. Lucien's eyes softened, gold flickering to amber. If I do, you'll never forget me. You'll never move on. And you were born for more than that. Evelyn's voice cracked. You think I can go back to that world? To courts and lies and silence? He smiled faintly. You don't have to. The moon listens to you now. You can rebuild what the old world broke. She wanted to scream, to beg the heavens to stop stealing what she loved. But she knew he was right. The world she'd freed needed her voice, the one that could command the sky and soothe the wild. Still, she whispered, I don't want to do it alone. Lucien's gaze lingered on her for a long moment. Then he took her hand, lifting it to his lips. His kiss was warm, human, trembling. You won't be. The bond pulsed one last time, a surge of light that passed between them, threw them into the air itself. Then his hand began to fade. Evelyn gasped, holding on tighter, but her fingers met only light. Lucien looked at her, smiling through the shimmer that swallowed him. When the moon rises, speak my name once more. Not to call me back, but to remember who you are. Lucien, I'll hear you, he said softly. Wherever the wind moves. The light flared, then he was gone. Evelyn fell to her knees, sobbing into the river's edge. The water shimmered faintly under her tears. Above her, the sky split open with sunlight. When the crying stopped, she stood. The forest was quiet again. The bond was gone, but her chest still held its echo. By dusk, she reached the edge of Ashburn. The town was different, quieter, humbled. The courthouse that once towered over the square now stood empty, its windows dark. The people no longer looked at her with pity or fear. They bowed their heads when she passed. Her father was waiting on the steps, older, smaller. His voice cracked when he spoke. Evelyn, I thought you were dead. She met his eyes, the same gray-blue as the winter sky, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. I was, she said quietly. But I'm not anymore. He tried to speak, but she turned away. There was nothing left to say. That night, Evelyn climbed to the highest hill overlooking the forest. The moon rose. Whispered his non-smoker. The wind stirred, warm against her skin. Somewhere far below, a wolf howled, not mournful, but gentle, eternal. And Evelyn Hart, the silent daughter who had once been voiceless, stood beneath the moon and finally smiled. Spring came slowly to Ashburn. The last traces of snow melted into the earth, feeding rivers that once ran red with war and fear. The forest, long shunned by the villagers, began to bloom again, its trees lush, its soil alive with the hum of something newly reborn. And at the heart of it all stood Evelyn Hart, the girl who had once been silent, now the woman who carried the voice of the moon. She no longer lived in the town. The courthouse had been abandoned, its cold marble halls crumbling under ivy and time. The people who once worshipped its authority now came to her instead, not as a judge's daughter, but as the woman who had ended the curse. They called her the Moonkeeper. Evelyn didn't correct them. Her cottage sat on the edge of the woods, built of cedar and stone, smoke curling from its chimney like a soft promise. Inside, her world was simple, dried herbs hanging from beams, a small fire that never went out, and shelves lined with journals written in careful, looping script. Each page carried stories of the wild and the voices that had once been forgotten. Sometimes, at night, she would sit by the window and listen. To the wind. To the wolves that no longer hunted, but sang. And sometimes when the air was still and the moon was full, she swore she could hear him. Lucien. It had been 1 year since the night of the binding. The memory of light and song still lived in her bones. The villagers no longer feared the forest, but none dared cross too deep into its heart. They said it belonged to her, to the Moonkeeper and the ghost of the Alpha who guarded her. Evelyn didn't argue. Every dawn, She walked the path to the old stone circle, the one that had once held her mother's blood, her father's sins, and her own awakening. The stones were cracked, blackened, but flowers grew through them now, wild, white, and fragrant. She always brought one candle, always lit it, always whispered his name once, Lucian. The flame would flicker once, twice, as if the air itself remembered. That morning, the forest felt different, warmer. The wind carried the scent of rain and pine. Evelyn paused by the riverbank, kneeling to fill a small clay bowl. Her reflection rippled in the water, calmer than it once was, her eyes brighter, her face older but at peace. She poured the water onto the roots of a young birch tree and murmured the old words Lucian had taught her in dreams. The words that weren't a command but a thank you. The ground shimmered faintly. When she stood, she felt it, a pulse in the air, slow, familiar. Her heart began to race. Lucian? She whispered. The forest answered with silence. Then, from the far side of the clearing, something moved. A shadow. Tall, steady, human. Evelyn froze, her breath catching. The sunlight through the leaves painted gold across his hair. His steps were quiet, his body half covered in furs. His eyes, those impossible, burning gold eyes, met hers. She couldn't move. He smiled. You kept your promise, he said softly. His voice was the same, deep, rough, warm as fire. Evelyn felt her knees weaken. I thought that I was gone? He shook his head. I was... for a time. She stepped closer, her voice barely a breath. How? Lucian's gaze softened. When you sang Mercy, you didn't destroy me. You bound my spirit to the forest, to its roots, its rivers, its wolves. I was everywhere, but nowhere human. Until tonight. She blinked back tears. Tonight? He looked up at the sky. The full moon was rising, vast and silver, its reflection rippling across the river. It's the first full moon since you forgave the world, he said quietly. And the first the moon has granted me form again. Evelyn's hands trembled. For how long? Lucian smiled sadly. Until dawn. The words broke her heart like a quiet storm. That isn't fair. He reached out, brushing his fingers against her cheek. The touch was warm, solid, real. The moon doesn't care for fairness. Only balance. Tears slid down her face, catching the moonlight. Then let it stop. Just this once. Lucian's thumb traced her jaw, slow and reverent. If it did, the world would lose its song. I've lived without mine for 17 years, she whispered. I could live without the sun, too. He smiled at that, soft, aching, full of the kind of love that could only exist between two souls who'd already lost each other once. Come, he murmured. Walk with me. They moved through the forest together, the moonlight spilling through the branches, the sound of the river following them like a lullaby. Every leaf seemed to glow, every shadow seemed to bow in quiet recognition. Evelyn spoke softly as they walked. The town is changing. People listen now. They plant trees where they once built gallows. Children play in the fields at night. It's like the world is breathing again. Lucian smiled. Because you gave it back its voice. She looked at him, her throat tight. You gave me mine. They stopped in the clearing where it had all begun, the place of chains and blood and song. The stones were quiet now, but the air still held a faint hum, a heartbeat beneath the earth. Lucian turned to her. The forest remembers you. It remembers Mercy. She stepped closer, her hands trembling as they found his. What will happen when the sun rises? I'll go back, he said softly. To the wind, to the rivers, to everything that still needs guarding. She nodded, her lips trembling. Will I see you again? He smiled faintly. Every time the moon listens. The night grew brighter, the light silvering the air around them. Evelyn lifted her face toward the sky, tears catching in her lashes. Then listen now. Lucian leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. Always. And when their lips met, the forest lit like dawn. The bond between them flared. Not as curse, not as chain, but as light. The moon shone down, wrapping them in its glow until the forest itself seemed to sing again. A melody of wind and water and heartbeats. When the first gold of sunrise touched the trees, Lucian's form began to fade. Evelyn held him tighter, her voice breaking. Don't go. He smiled against her hair. I'm not going. I'm just everywhere. The light swallowed him, warm and gentle, and she was left alone in the clearing, the scent of pine and rain lingering where he had stood. She looked down at her wrist. The scar was glowing again, only this time it didn't burn. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Evelyn closed her eyes, smiling through her tears. Until the moon forgets the night, she whispered. The wind moved through the forest, brushing her skin like a familiar touch. And somewhere in the wild beyond, the alpha's voice answered, not in words, but in the soft, endless hum of life reborn. The world listened. And the girl who had once been silent became its song.